County Zoning Board of Appeals. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Just make sure your microphone is on.
Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
James Hebert,
Here.
Peter Freilinger,
Here.
David Bork,
Here.
Shelley Stevenson. Here. And Christine Snow.
Here.
Okay. And for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for the record tonight, we, Ms. Snow and Ms. Stevenson are both voting members, so everybody here is a voting member tonight.
The snow is always a voting member.
Ms. Snow is always a voting member, excuse me, but definitely a voting member for everybody, yes. Thank you very much.
You get to vote twice.
You don't get the vote twice. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes from September 14th, our last meeting last month? Does anybody have any questions or any comments, edits? Excellent. I'll have yes, Mr. Bork.
Yeah, I was not here for the meeting, but I did view the entire meeting on the YouTube channel.
Great.
So I feel that I'm qualified in order to comment.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Mr. Bork, Mr. Freilinger, so moved. And second, Mr. Bork.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. That vote, and one abstention. 1, 2, 3, 4, yay, one abstention. Thank you very much. All right, first on our agenda, we have a 6-month extension request by Michael Rickman of Custom Concepts on behalf of Ross Family LLC for Appeal 2724, limited reduction of yard size residential appeal approved on April 13th, 2022, and the withdrawal of Appeal 2736, which we heard last month, if you all recall, variance appeal on 10th 9th Street. We don't have to have him speak at this point. We just, yeah.
It's your discretion.
Yeah, Mr. Rickman, would you like to speak on this? So the gentleman for us, they're asking for a 6-month extension on the appeal that we granted them in April. They asked for something additional last month, and they decided to just go ahead with the original plan, but they're asking for an additional amount of time to make that happen. I personally don't see an issue with this, but I'll entertain any comments from the board. Questions? No? Okay. Then we're going to do an up and down vote on this one. All those in favor of approving the 6-month extension for appeal number 2724, please raise your hand. All right, that is unanimous. 6-month extension is granted. Next, we have the approval of the draft written decisions for appeals heard at the September 14th meeting. The first one is appeal number 2734, special exception appeal. Have we all had a chance to review the notes? Mr. Bork, you stated that you've watched the last month's meeting, so you feel competent to vote on these.
I do not.
And you do not. Thank you, Ms. Snow, for clarifying. You can just abstain for these following 3. Any questions, comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve appeal number 2734 written decision. Mr. Bork,
So moved.
second.
Second.
Mr. Freilinger, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is 1, 2, 3, 4 yay, 1 abstention. Next, we have the draft written decisions for appeal number 2735, miscellaneous appeal by Jessica Stomberg on behalf of Crossholt Roads Holdings. Has everyone had a chance to review those findings? Are there any comments? Excellent. Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Yes.
Motion?
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Thank you very much. In the second?
Second.
Mr. Freilinger, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that is 4 yay and 1 abstention. Draft written decision for appeal number 2737, practical difficulty variance appeal by Mike Rickman of Custom Concepts on behalf of Thomas E. and Gwen M. Moore of 8 Shell Street. And I'm presuming everyone has also had a chance to review those minutes. And I am not seeing any comment. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Bork,
Motion to approve.
and the second, Mr. Freilinger, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stevenson, excuse me. Yeah, good. That's the second by Ms. Stevenson. Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Great. 4 yay and 1 abstention. All right. Our first new item that we have here for new business. This is a shoreland setback determination by Mike Rickman of Custom Concepts Incorporated on behalf of Harold and Kathy Caldwell, 64 Jones Creek Drive, Assessors Map U022, Lot 29. Mr. Rickman, why don't you please, thank you for setting up and let us, once you're all set up, let us know why you're here and what you're asking for.
Good evening. Excuse me. Mike Richmond, Custom Concepts, here again. Tonight I'm here on behalf of my clients Harold and Kathy Caldwell of 64 Jones Creek Drive on Pine Point, requesting a determination of meeting setback to the greatest practical extent. Give you some highlights here and then I'll open myself up to questions. I've been working with Harold and Kathy to develop a design to replace their existing cottage into a place that they can call home for many years. This parcel is located on the north side of Pine Point and faces the marsh. It contains an existing cottage and a detached outbuilding, and it's relatively flat, but it does slope a little bit from front to back towards the marsh. I do want a couple important notes. We do plan on designing the structure to comply with the proposed changes to the floodplain. So therefore, by definition, it would kind of be a stilt house. So something we don't have to do quite yet, but we want to do the right thing. The existing structure was built around the year around 1900, and it's simply beyond repair. It was never intended to be anything more than an old seasonal cottage, and shows extensive structural rot. And in our opinion, it's not worth the salvage. The current cottage, however, sits within the 75-foot setback to the high water line. Overall goals: construct a year-round home for them to enjoy, utilize the one-time 30% expansion possibility, maximize the height allowed, even though it's going to be much, much shorter than neighboring properties. And one of the biggest things that they've come to me with is they really want to minimize the impact to the environment during construction, as well as be good long-term stewards to the environment, including extra insulation. It's going to be a super insulated home, and we want to put solar panels on it for solar gain, solar power. So the resulting design, it's a very modest home, covered parking for only one vehicle, very low ceilings, and a very low pitch roof line because of the height limitation. So we've discussed the placement of this home in great length with the owners and poor Mr. Longstaff. We respect the value and the setbacks from the property lines very well as the setbacks from the marsh, but we find ourselves requesting the location of this for several reasons, which I've included in your packet. So please allow me to highlight some of these. Number one, there's a big existing tree right in front of this home. We had a qualified arborist view this tree and agreed that it's a very valuable tree, given that there's not many trees in that area. We've been informed that we should ensure that any new structure is at least 10 feet away from the furthest extent from the root system. We must also keep in mind that we need to minimize disturbance of construction equipment during construction, which can be difficult to manage. When we began this process, I was not at all aware of a small ditch in the back of the property that would have a great impact on the 75-foot setback from the marsh. The Town of Scarborough GIS website does not show this ditch, but when we had a professional survey completed, it showed this narrow ditch extending towards the cottage. Yep, thank you, Brian. In reality, this ditch is very small. In fact, you can easily jump over it. However, its impact to the setback line is enormous and is probably the biggest need for this determination tonight. Without the impact of this ditch line and of the highest annual tide extended in more of a typical fashion, the rear of this existing cottage would be well beyond the 100-foot setback, and the Caldwell family could build exactly where they are today. So we appreciate that the ditch it's real, right? It's there, but it's such a small sliver and has an enormous impact. In addition to that, this property is located in a B1 zone, and it's bordered by a business to the east. The parking lot for this business is very close to the Caldwell's property line, and it brings with it the typical noise and associated with a commercial property. So therefore, the closer we pull to the road, the more exposed the Caldwells are to this activity. Yes, the Caldwells could install a huge fence or screen or something to help shield that, but I think we would all agree that that's not, that's not good for anybody. The adjacent property to the west is quite large and tall. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to drive by the site, but it has quite an impact. While touring the site, I realized that the Caldwell's home is quite literally in the shadow of this house to the west. We acknowledge and appreciate that one property owner is not responsible for any shadows they cast onto another property owner. We get that. We're not asking for relief from that. But it's very real. The Caldwells do not wish to have a big, tall house. If they move closer to the road, they can have a big and tall house, but they don't want that. So if we're forced to maintain in the shadow of this big house, blocking the sun and blocking sun from potential solar panels when the sun is low, it's a real issue. So another issue or point is the streetscape. Another benefit to our proposed location is the overall benefit to the streetscape. If we are forced to push it closer to the road, it will literally crowd out the existing small building by the road, as well as be really close and impactful to that home to the west, which again is pretty large. This is in your packet, but I thought it was worth printing larger. To show these differences, excuse me. If we're forced to place it closer to the road, you can see how tight it is to the west, to the building to the west, and to the existing building on the site. If we're allowed to keep it closer to where it is now, much more breathing room here. This is the commercial building. This is the large house to the west. As far as the shadows, this is actually a pretty realistic model. We use some modeling software to do this. Same scenarios. If we're forced to push it much closer to the road, you can see the impact of this thing. This is very real. If we're allowed to keep it closer to where it is, there's a lot of relief to be gained for sunlight. So our proposed location has been developed over many renditions and conversations as we try to find the middle ground here. They truly want to minimize their impact in many ways, which led to this location. So with that, I'll open myself up to any questions.
All right, thank you. I'll start with one question first, and I'll get to you, Ms. Stevenson. In that rendering there, is the shadow render modeled at, say, sunset or afternoon?
No, if I remember correctly, it was mid-afternoon.
Mid-afternoon, so 2, 3 o'clock or something like
I think
that.
it was right around 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson, your question?
Yes, thank you. In that top left picture where you would bring it forward, where is that tree in regards to that building? Is the tree gone at that point?
Correct, right under the house. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Fralinger?
Two questions. First off, that creek that you mentioned, do you have any provenance on it? A lot of those small creeks in that area, and for full disclosure, I live in Blue Point and spend a lot of time in Pine Point, so I kind of know the area fairly well. A lot of those are historically man-made. Do you know have any provenance or history on this creek?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I don't know.
I don't know, the land beside it, looks like it was built up a little bit because it's flat. And ours kind of has a natural slope to it, so it may have been created when the person on the right flattened theirs out and maybe built it up a little bit.
Yeah, there are quite a few of those, especially as I look at that straight creeks, which were designed to drain land to provide a drainage, to create more buildable land or usable land nearby. In which case, I think that it would be worth or I don't know that for certain, but a man-made creek would be, in my mind, different from a natural creek from a shoreland perspective. The other question I have, and I'll admit that I've eaten more at Salty's Bay than I probably really should. You mentioned it's in a B1 zone. If you move the house forward, you're very close to the parking area there, and I know that little building next door there is kind of effectively their bar. Or they've used it in the past for their bar. Have you communicated or have you talked with the owners? And I know that property has been transitioning over time. Have you talked to the owners about that at all in terms of how that would work?
I have not. I don't know if the owners have.
I mean, we talked to them because we're neighbors
Yeah.
with them, and they know where we have a plan. We haven't talked with them about the location of it.
Kathy, do you want to approach the,
Yeah, if you're going to answer a question, if you wouldn't mind, just so we can have it all recorded on the record, we can't pick up anything else. Just state your name and.
So Kathy
answer.
Caldwell, 64 Jones Creek Drive.
Thank you.
We haven't spoken with them about the exact location. They're actually kind of busy over the summer because they do have the Salty Bay and the tavern that they're running. So we mostly just wave. And so we haven't had a conversation or real discussion, but they know we're planning on doing something.
And then last question, just, it wasn't clear. What is that building closest to the street on your property? Is that a shed or is that a garage or what is that?
Actually, somebody lived in it. It has an old like kitchen countertop and sink, and then a what was it, like a out pipe for a toilet, and they must have had like a wood stove or something because there's a big pipe for heating.
And nothing's contemplated with that associated with this discussion at all?
Not with this.
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Got it. Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Mr. Bork?
Okay. I'd like to refer to the standards for shoreline zoning. And one of them, just to read from here, is that should any non-conforming building or structure be destroyed or damaged regardless of the cause by more than 50% of the market value of the structure before such damage, destruction, or removal, it may be rebuilt or restored, provided the permit is obtained within a period of 18 months of the date of said damage. So my question is this, when did, first of all, how long have you owned the property?
We purchased the property September of 2020.
Okay. So about 2 years ago?
Yeah.
All right, so that's beyond the 18 months. Okay. When did you become aware that the home was, are you living in the home right now?
No,
You're not, okay. So when did you become aware of the fact that the home was damaged beyond repair, meaning more than 50% damaged market value? And what proof do you have of that?
exactly, when we hired Mike. So we met with Mike August about a year ago, just had an initial meeting. He's been quite busy, so he hasn't really been able to get us in his schedule until just about the last couple of months. When we had the survey done, which that took quite some time as well. So it's been 2 years in the making, and it's been a very, very slow process because the surveyors were so busy. And so we had to do that first and then finally connect with Mike after that. So if we could have done this much sooner, believe me, we
understand.
would have.
Mike, could you please give us some information regarding the extent of the damage of this house and proof that the market value is worth 50% less than
Mr. Chair.
what it originally was?
1 second, David.
yeah,
Mr.
Mr.
Longstaff?
Bork, I think you're misinterpreting the wording in the ordinance.
Mhm.
They don't have to demonstrate that there's any damage to the house. The way it's worded is if they choose to remove it by 50% or more of the market value, they're talking about tearing the house down. So that would be more than 50%. When they do that, they then have to demonstrate that they either can't move it back to the greatest practical extent or the setback, or they've moved it back as far as they can. And that's what that means. If it was damaged by less than, like a tree fell on the roof and it was damaged by less than 50%, they can build it back with a permit within 12 months.
Okay.
So it's not something they have to prove to you. It's just that if they decide to tear half the house down, or 51% of the house down, or 51% of the market value, that's when they would have to come and prove that. But they're going to remove the whole house. That's what they're talking
Well,
about.
Thank you for clarifying that, Brian, because I really didn't understand the language in that.
Yeah.
And shoreline zoning is something that we don't see all the time. And so this is a difficult one for us to comprehend, if you don't mind.
Me too.
Yeah. So, good. Would you add anything to that?
No, I guess to answer your question prior, first visit to the house, it was very obvious that it was beyond repair. It's really tilted. Put your head underneath that thing, there's an access panel within 1 minute. Like, wow, this is very tired, needs to go. So that was my very first visit.
Other questions? Have you studied what any sort of potential environmental impact would be of raising the house and replacing it in the same location? As far as you're confident that this level of construction in this space isn't going to sort of upset or provide any environmental impact in this area?
No, in fact, I would actually submit that if we're allowed to keep it where we're showing it, it'd probably be the least impact. I mean, right now, all the soils are underneath this house. They've been impacted for many, many years, since 1900. If we come forward, all that is nice lawn right now, and huge impact to the tree. The tree is a big concern. So I think we've moved back. I think it was 8 feet-ish, 7 foot 10-ish. In my opinion, we could put the silt fence up there, and I think construction equipment could stay there. So technically, we wouldn't really be impacting anything closer to the marsh that's impacted today, because we're going to give ourselves that little bit of a work buffer.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, one
Yes, go
further
ahead.
question. Are you on a septic system there?
No, this is
It's
sewer.
public.
Yeah,
So
public
it's
sewer.
Public water and sewage.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? And right now, you're proposing to have the house in its exact location, and it's not going to be any closer to the road or farther away from the shoreland, that finger ditch? Or is that going to be 8 feet farther away, you're saying?
So technically, no. Technically, we do plan on pulling further away from the marsh by about 8 feet. Odd geometry, though. I can show you this. I printed it nice and large. Sorry, which way is this? So technically, we'd be back about 7 or 8, almost 8 feet further than it is now.
Real quick, Mr. Richmond, orientation, where's the road there?
Yeah, hold on.
Oh,
I have
sorry.
a better scenario.
It's all good, take your time.
I came prepared on this one. So the view on the left is the existing conditions. Right here, technically, is the closest portion to this finger, if you will, this ditch.
Mhm.
The proposed, I'm coming about 8 feet closer to the road. So technically, I'm a little bit further away from the ditch, and I'm definitely further away from the resource in the back.
Okay.
And to me, that's what's offering up now the space that's currently occupied the house that we can use for construction.
And therefore, you're slightly closer to the road,
Correct.
but still far enough from the tree that you don't believe there's an impact of the tree in construction or in the final location.
Well put. I think we found the happy
Gotcha.
medium.
Okay, just want to be clear. Thank you.
According to
Longchat?
according to the drawing, you're 2 inches further away from the ditch.
Correct.
29.5 versus 29.3.
Correct. But due to the odd geometry of this thing, on this side, I'm almost 8 feet back.
Yeah.
So it just,
But we're looking at the closest point.
Yep.
That's what we're.
Right, and your argument, Mr. Richmond, is that more of the mass of the house is further away.
correct.
Thank you. For me, I like to see that it's being moved further away from the hazard, not the hazard, but the shoreland, that they're trying to make some amends to make it closer to the road. Additional comments? Questions? Have Mr. Longstaff, I know this isn't part of the normal, I guess, procedure for this, but have we received any written comments, or is anyone here from the public that wanted to speak with regard to this particular application?
Because this is not a variance
It's not a
appeal,
public.
we don't notify abutters, so no one that abuts the property would know this.
Okay.
This is a zoning board determination of greatest practical extent of the setback. I don't know if anyone in the audience is here to speak on this behalf or not, because they could certainly look at the agenda
Mhm.
posted online.
Absolutely. And I guess I'll offer it to anyone here that would like to speak on that. Seeing none, I will close that opportunity. Thank you. I always want to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. I guess at this point, what we're looking at is a vote up and down to allow this construction to take place. We are also able to put any, we can amend our vote to include any restrictions or considerations on the property if we wanted to do so. Mr. Frolinger?
Just a question, again, this is because we don't deal with zoning, the shoreland setback issues very often. Is there a DEP thing that comes in through this, or anything that from the state that we have to deal with, or just a question? I don't want to.
No, that's good. And the question would be, would this be pending a DEP, not guidance, but letter?
Yeah.
Mr. Longstaff?
Yeah, I think for a replacement structure, there would probably be a permit by rule. There also is the requirement, because they're expanding the structure, they would need to record the approved plan, whatever that may be, would have to be recorded in the registry, and they also have to take before and after photos. So there's all kinds of checks and balances built into the shoreline zoning.
But that's not something that precedes us or anything like that?
That's all part of the permitting
Okay, just,
Gotcha.
again, just
at my level.
got it, fair enough.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
So there are additional steps that will take place here, specifically the DEP permit by rule. So they will have a chance to weigh in on this as well for the board's information. Okay. I guess at this time, yes, go ahead, Mr. Richmond.
May I add one more thing?
Sure.
One more restriction on this lot, which there's been a lot. On the right-hand side of this property, there's a jog in the property line, right here, towards the commercial building, which is right here. When we offset that for a side setback, it creates this little bump right here. Doesn't seem like a lot until you're really trying to lay out a house for people. The further, I'm actually 1 inch from that bump right there. So if I had to push it forward, this house now is forced to become even narrower than it is. And if I showed you the floor plans, I've had my shoehorn out trying to get a reasonably sized house in this. So just, that's what I'm up against.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. So you're looking at side back constrictions as well.
Very tight ones.
I'll entertain a motion at this time to approve this setback determination as currently presented. Mr. Bork,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll reserve this time for any further discussion, comments. Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
For our next item on our agenda, we are looking at, excuse me. We're looking at our 2738 was withdrawn. Is that correct, Mr. Longstaff? Okay, so we are looking at appeal number 2739. This is a miscellaneous appeal by Big Mountain Realty Trust, 36 Running Hill Road, Assessors Map R018, Lot 39. Please come on ahead, step forward, present your material, tell us who you are, why you're here, and we can start off.
Very good. Good evening, folks. My name is Stephen Keenan. I work with the Keenan Auction Company. I wanted to give you just a quick, brief history of who we are and what we're doing here tonight. I work with an auction company, as I mentioned. It's a small family auction company. We are located here in Maine and have conduct auctions of real estate and personal property throughout Maine and New England. We've been doing this for over 50 years, and we've conducted well over 8,500 auctions. We have a beautiful office up here on Outer Congress Street up by Unum. It's quite nice, and one of our problems is we're a little restricted on space there. So when we purchased the property, we realized it. And we've been on, historically, we've been looking for the past year and a half for a facility, and we've landed on this property out on 36 Running Hill Road. We have needs for storage of equipment for our company's own personal use within our business, but also we have needs to store equipment on this facility and on this site for our clients. That's equipment and personal property that would be earmarked for sale at an auction in the future. And that would be an online internet type auction. And then there may be rare small live auction needs at this site as well. Last evening, we were at the planning board meeting, and the planning board informed us that they advised the zoning board of appeals here, the ZBA, to approve our condition. We were happy about that, but they also indicated that they had a contingency attached to it that basically states that it would be pending the outcome of a phase 2 environmental site assessment report, and then performing any necessary remediations that would be associated with that report. The overall application that we've submitted, I think it's important to bring up a few key points. The use that we're proposing for this site at 36 Running Hill Road is a much less intrusive use as compared to the existing that's there now. We are looking at a facility that would not house or store contaminated or hazardous type materials. We would not have bulk storage of fuels and diesel fuels and that sort of thing that currently takes place there now. So there'd be a much lesser impacted use on the site with our proposed use. I would also state that if you haven't been by the Goldstein Steel scrapyard, you're going to see a much cleaner property there. You're going to have a very well orderly contained property. We've also earmarked plans to reside the building and the roof and clean up the property to give it a professional look, which we're accustomed to with any of the properties we've owned. There's a large fence around the property. We're happy to have it remain. It just adds to security features to the site, which are important to us. There's also trees and buffers that are between us and the residential neighbor, and those would remain as well. I think one of the big points to our application, or at least to us, our company, is we are very extremely environmentally conscious, okay? This is not the first time we've been involved with a property that has had potential environmental problems. Over our 50-year history, we've had 2 other properties that we've been involved with in purchasing that had required remediation costs to go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is not new to us, but yet we're very cautious and we're conscious about what's going on with these properties that we're involved with. We're good stewards to real estate. We're good stewards to property that we occupy on a temporary basis to help clients sell their equipment and their stuff. So we're very aware of our surroundings and what we're doing. As it relates to the environmental concerns with this property, we're 3 to 5 steps ahead of the planning board on this. We put this property under contract way back in August and immediately began conducting and hiring and paying for phase 1 environmental and phase 2 reports. The phase 1s are completed, of course, and we're halfway through our phase 2 environmental site assessment, well before even making application to the town of Scarborough. It's important to us. I do a lot of, I do a lot of governmental work. I do work for the courts, of the bankruptcy courts. I have to make sure I'm clean all the way around. And so it's very important to us when we get involved in real estate that we know what we have for environmental concerns. The first thing I would be telling you is that if we find a problem at this site that's insurmountable in terms of cost, it's too expensive, in other words, to clean up and remediate, we're gone. We're out of the deal and we walk away. Our contract is contingent upon that. The results of the report might come up clean. So great, we're all happy. Happy to share the report with you. If we have a low financial impact cleanup that we're presented with, and one that we think makes sense and is affordable and go through it, great. We're all happy to go forward and clean up our site and move forward. But again, I can't stress enough that we do not intend to proceed with the purchase of the property if we find a bad result with this environmental phase 2 report. I bring all of this up to you because I know we received an approval with a pending condition, so in my mind, we don't have an approval. Maybe you can speak to that differently, but that's the way I see it. And I'd respectfully ask that the phase 2 contingency that accompanied this approval be removed, and that an approval is granted tonight based on our intended use of the property under the zone. And that we proceed forward. We do, and as I've mentioned, we do have a phase 2 that's halfway completed, and we have all intentions of taking that to full completion and then making our decision of moving forward or not. If you see us moving forward, you're going to have a copy of the report. If you see us not moving forward, we're pulling our application or our approvals. We're not doing anything there. So it's important to us to understand if we are approved here this evening, and we are under time constraints with many facets of our contract, and it's important for us to understand where we stand. So I'm open for any other questions that somebody might have.
Board with any initial questions, comments? Ms. Snow?
Would you clarify, you do not yet own the property?
That is correct, ma'am. We are under a purchase and sales agreement. That's correct.
And the phase 2, my question, I'm sorry, Ms. Snow, were you done with your question? Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt. So with this phase 2 environmental study, if it turns out that you're forced to do remediation that exceeds your initial investment, you're not going to move forward with the purchase of the property?
If we look at a remediation schedule with this report that doesn't meet to our satisfaction, I'm not saying it has to exceed, or if we find that it's too expensive, in whether it's a formula based on the value of the property, anticipated value, what have you, if we see a remediation issue that we don't like, we're not moving forward. We have that ability in our report. I mean, in our purchase agreement. So if we move forward, we're happy to give you the report and say, here's what we've got. It's clean. We're moving forward. If we have a report that says you got to spend 20 grand to clean up some stuff, something in that neighborhood, sure, let's move forward. And here's the report. Have you more than welcome to share it with you. If we move forward and purchase the property and go ahead and occupy it and do the use that we intend to do there. But I have a hard time going through the process now. I'm at the point where I'm going to be spending thousands of dollars here, and I don't even know if I can do an auction center up there properly. I'm worried about any other concerns that may come up through the board, or any other contingencies that may be placed upon me. And so it bothers me. I do understand that I may have a remediation program within the report that could have some, you may view it differently than DEP views it, okay? And we need to resolve that issue. But again, remember, we'd be working under the guises of DEP and in their whole process and mission statement and so forth. So I guess where I'm coming from is it leaves uncertainty right now, the way this is being presented to us without having a full approval. We don't particularly know if we can do what we want to do. And is somebody going to put another contingency out there outside of an environmental concern? And that concerns us.
Okay. So comments and questions, Mr. Fralinger?
On the PSA, you've got the clause 12 as an environmental site assessment is to be completed within 60 days of the agreement, which on or about October 28th or something like that. What's the progress on that in the site assessment that's being done?
The holes and site borings have been marked and will be drilled next Tuesday. They were shot down on labs. They're all backed up everywhere in the state. However, they were fortunate to find a lab yesterday. So we're on track and can stay within the time frame of our contract. So that was very good news to us here today. So it's about halfway done in my mind. And they are, like I say, drilling next week and taking samples.
And nothing's come up in the preliminary site review or in the inspection that was done in order to determine the boring sites?
Or determine what?
The drill sites, sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Only the phase one has been conducted now, in which there were flags that called for a further study. The biggest flag being the Silver's Auto Garage or salvage yard that was located next door with the B-Ramp.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they're right on track. One of the biggest things I'm learning as I go through this particular time frame with environmental reports is just getting the scheduling together with the various vendors that they use. It's not very difficult. I'm in fact using the same environmental company that does work for the town of Scarborough and all your testings. I'm working with Saint Germain. So maybe you've experienced that with them, but they're telling us it's very difficult to operate right now and get things done, but they're getting it done within our time frame, so we're pleased.
That's, no, we're seeing that everywhere and everywhere on sort of third-party reviews and third-party inspection processes, not just for the zoning board, but for other things. So
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
The other thing is, have they begun the removal, or have they, has Goldstein started the removal or started the clean out of the property yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I understand that it's under PSA contingency, so they may not have, but
Well, they may not, yeah, they
Yeah.
want to make sure I can do what I need to do there and
Correct,
those
yeah.
sorts of things. There may be a possibility where we would assist Mr. Dumont in auctioning off those items to get
Sure,
them
yeah.
out of there. Or quite frankly, Mr. Dumont could call up a scrap dealer and at the price of scrap on a given day, sell everything and it'd be gone within 2 days.
Yep.
It's just that simple.
I'm
For
thinking
him.
more of some of I'm not sure what's there today, but the scrap auto stuff, and in particular, the contaminant products, the batteries, the fluids that are drained from the scrap, those.
None of that takes place on this site.
Okay, got it.
There is not a used battery there from automobile at all. There are no automobiles on the site that are carcassed and used for parts
So
for
this is
resale.
pure chop, essentially. or-
This is pure stock steel, scrap steel that might come from leftover supplies at BIW. Cut short steel, they cut 20 pieces and it was too short. Doesn't meet the testing and hardness.
Yep.
And so he buys that type of product from around New England, and he buys new steel from vendors as well. But he also buys shelving, warehouse shelving of heavy gauge and cuts it and sells it. And so it operates under a junkyard automobile permit, graveyard permit. That's how it does operate now
but
as a
there are-
permit, but only as scrap steel. And that's all he's done there.
Got it. Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Do you have any concern about, I'll say the current material that's currently stored there on site and its potential for environmental contamination?
I asked that same question. I think what everybody wonders is, geez, the ground's all rusty. Is there a problem there? There has not been a problem, and I was informed by our soil scientists that it looks bad, but it's iron, and that's prevalent throughout the state. What would be of a concern is something you might not see. Was there some solvent or something on steel to keep it from rusting at some other place in an indoor location that is now washed off under the ground and that type of thing? But overall, no, not concerned about the soil, but I want to find out. That's why we've spent the 20 grand here to have our
And that's-
study done. you know.
That's the phase 2 environmental
That's the
study.
phase 2, yeah.
Gotcha.
It's easy to hear it, but I want to be assured and have the test and the lab results back it up. So
Great.
that's what we're doing there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Although I think it's a question for the board. Do we have the authority to remove a contingency that the planning board placed? Because I know you had said that you were looking for that to be removed by us, but I was under the assumption that we don't have that authority.
No,
I could be wrong.
we have a recommendation from the planning board, and they have recommended a condition that be placed on this should we vote to approve this appeal. We can I'll say politely disagree with the planning board and choose to not include this if we wish, or we can also choose to vote down this appeal, even though the planning board has given it a favorable recommendation. However, in any case, we have to provide clear findings of fact and stated reasons for why we are doing so. And that's our contingency. Yeah, no worries. Ms. Snow,
I have a couple of questions for James and Brian, maybe.
go ahead.
I haven't seen a petition that was not by the owner of a property.
I'm sorry.
I've never seen a petition come in that the owner, the petitioner didn't own the property.
A valid,
Oh, and
yeah, a valid purchase and sales agreement gives them the right title and
Is
interest
sufficient.
that allows them to apply for it. Because in many cases like this one, someone doesn't want to occupy that property until they found out whether or not they can get board approval to do what they want to do. And obviously, if they don't get board approval, that purchase and sales agreement will likely go away in most cases.
So does our approval go with the land or with the petitioner?
It goes with this application and the petitioner. I don't believe and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but if this gentleman were to step back from this project and someone else were to take up the reins on it and apply again, they would have to go through the same process again. Is that correct, Brian?
No, not exact. If Keenan Auction were, let's just say in the future, to be bought out by another auction company, okay? And they wanted to do exactly what Keenan Auction was doing, that miscellaneous appeal would actually run with the land in that case. However, if Keenan Auction or Big Mountain Realty sometime in the future said, we no longer have a use for this site, we've got other plans, and they wanted to sell it to someone else who wanted to do another non-conforming use that wasn't this, they would be back here in front of the board with their own miscellaneous appeal application to do that particular non-conforming use, and we would review the same standards again to see if they met
But
those.
anyone with this use would have this approval.
If they did exactly the same thing, yes. They'd still need to get a new certificate of occupancy to be on the property, so we knew exactly who was on the property. But if the use did not change, they could sell, Goldstein Steel could sell to another steel company who could operate in exactly the same way that they do. If they were to expand that use or change that use in any way, they would have to come back for approval from the board.
And so once, if we approve this application and the auction house is able to operate there, in the future, any future auction houses could also operate in a very similar fashion, even if there were with a different owner.
Mhm.
Because we've granted them the ability to
To the
operate
land.
this specific operation there.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead,
Could I
sir.
make an additional comment that, as I've been looking at this whole process from a bird's eye view, the Silver's Auto Garage operated on the adjoining site since the 1950s. The Goldstein Steel Company came in, and then later Danny Dumont came in, and they operated their steel business. It's basically doing steel. The Red Brook watershed's been abutting this for eternity. And the neighbor next door with the storage facility, which mind you is now a gorgeous storage facility, it looks really nice, has done the right things. And we're out here, we're doing the right things. I think one of the biggest reasons, and this is just my personal opinion, the planning board gave us this condition, was they're concerned about the Red Brook area. And I think that concern has just been heightened because of our application. The Red Brook's been there. Danny Dumont's been operating for decades and decades. And along comes Keenan, and here we are, and now, oh boy, we got to really have everybody do environmental stuff now. My point that I guess I'm making is there haven't been complaints, there haven't been problems down there, but maybe the focus should be more on the Red Brook property and on the site where they do have the control and the immediate authority to go down there and do some testing to see if there are problems with that Red Brook Preserve, and are there anything are there contaminants there? Because that's really the main concern. And obviously the health and welfare of the people occupying this property and any other property. But I know the wells have tested out okay up there. And there's been, that's what I'm being told. And, but that's one of the things I'm thinking about is maybe going right straight to the source of concern. And that's just my simple opinion as I look at this from a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
We're concerned and we're good stewards, but we need to understand where we stand,
No, and I appreciate that. And I mean, for, environmental concerns are very, they're serious considerations.
Yeah, they are.
And anytime they come up, we have to,
We gotta
review
look
them
at
and
'em,
take them
yep.
seriously, especially with, I guess following that up, what kind of equipment would you be storing outside? And what kind of equipment would be stored inside?
Okay, a good question. The type of equipment that we have in our business use, meaning the stuff I use day to day in our company operation, like landscape trailers, of office trailer that we use maybe 2 or 3 times a year on off-site sales. A forklift may go inside the building. It's a propane type forklift. It's not a gas job. A plow truck, normal business type items. A client who comes to us that needs an item sold in an upcoming timed online auction, needs it removed out of a facility due to an expiring lease or something. I'm painting some pictures for you. We'd go pick up a commercial dishwasher and put it inside the building. It could be, the other day we picked up 2 Botox machines, it's just, you name it. It really is odd and obscure type stuff. And sometimes it's just normal assets that you see every day, but not at any great degree of volume. Our best model is to sell items in place where they exist, not to move them and create labor and expense. We're not talking about putting over here hundreds of items all the time. That's not our, we just don't have room in our small parking lot over at Congress Street. It's not there. So we also have a couple of storage trailers that we sometimes would put file storage in and that sort of thing. Might have a 4-wheeler and a snowmobile. It's just, I guess, you'd be amazed at what we sell.
Sure.
So but primarily it's, a lot of the time it's rolling stock. I sell all the cop cars for the town of Scarborough. And I might store those if you needed space, that type of thing,
Mhm.
So it's really what we're looking at.
So I guess going just a little bit deeper with that,
Sure.
would you potentially be storing any sort of vehicles out there, tractors, farm equipment? And if it's an auction and they're not brand new, if they're older, do you have any sort of control if
We do,
somebody brings in and there's like a leak or an oil leak?
Yeah,
I'm
that,
thinking-
we discussed
and
this
I'm
last
just
night.
thinking-
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, and I didn't.
Great
I didn't
question
know.
and
I
good
appreciate that.
concern.
I didn't watch the planning board meeting last night.
Yeah,
but-
and a good concern. I'll give you a prime example. If you were to go out to Beechwood's Motor Speedway right now, if you're not familiar, we have a large consignment sale that we'll be doing there tomorrow. That's about a 9.5 acre parcel in the parking lot that we utilize. I'll have 500 people there tomorrow, tons of cars. And I've got over almost 1,000 items that are stored there now. And it's brand new items that come out of Ontario, brand new pressure washers, steam cleaners, cars, municipal cars, police cruisers. When they come in leaking, okay, we inform people we won't take leaking vehicles. We won't take them. But if they happen to start leaking, I have spill pads and preventive pans and that sort of thing, what we put under a vehicle. We check these items. We look at them. You can tell when they come in. You know what you're dealing with. We look them over. We don't take the liability. If we can get away from it, we do. The one-off vehicles that I'd store over on this lot are not, a lot of times they're bank repossessions. Banks don't store this stuff. They have people store it for them, and that's what we do. A lot of times municipalities can hold them in their own public works garages, and it's just sale day that they may bring them over. So it's really short-term storage. But we do take a lot of measure and precaution on looking at these vehicles and a skidder that comes in. We check hydraulic lines. I mentioned earlier in my remarks that we've done over 8,500 auctions, and of those, about a third of those auctions have been personal property. And in the 50 years we've been doing this, we've never had an environmental incident at one of our auctions or at one of our properties. We've cleaned up properties we bought that were dirty, but we've never had an environmental incident. We've had to use our absorbent pads before, but nothing at a reporting level that DEP would require a report on. So we don't have those types of, that type of history for our company. It's too much liability, and I'm working for a client that's a bank and a lender, so we got to protect their interests as well. So we're very good at it. That's what we do. So,
Questions? Mr. Bork?
How many auctions would you be doing on site at the Rolling Hill location?
good question. I can't think of the last on-site auction I did at one of our remote storage facilities. We have one up in Kingfield, and we had one over in South Portland at our other facility that I've done on a live auction basis, I'm talking. In the past 10 years, I've maybe done one in the past 10 years. What I would do a lot of, or maybe a lot of, I say maybe because I could maybe develop a pipeline where I put 20 items out there and I sell them every 2 weeks, or I sell them every month, or maybe every 2 months on a timed online basis, which is very, very different than a live on-site auction. In the timed online auction process, there are a lot of similarities to the live process in terms of setup, cataloging, photography, removal, and that sort of thing. What's very different is impact on the site. It's funny, in today's world, a lot of people buy stuff online and don't even look at it. They don't even go see it. And you may experience that yourself. But people will buy cars from us online and drive from Ohio and pick them up and take them home. It's crazy. I sent a microwave to Chicago. They never looked at it. So it's really crazy stuff. Why I tell you this is because I may be storing the asset there, but I'll have a preview for the market to come in and look at the asset if they want. I give them an option to look at it. And I do it like for an hour from 8 to 9 or 10 to 11 or maybe 10 to 12 if I have a bunch of items. And they don't, they come over and they look at it. Low impact. I mentioned to the planning board last night that if I had a large gathering of items there, I might have 5 to 20 people show up and look at it. And that would be a lot. What I deal with then is not trying to cram everybody into a restaurant down in, that I'm auctioning off down in the Old Port and wondering where they're all going to park. There's nothing like that. They're now going to look at it all online, their bid, and they drive over here on the day to pick up the items, and I'm only dealing with buyers. I'm not in movers. I'm not dealing with tire kickers, hot dog eaters, and people trying to socialize at an auction, which happens a lot. I'm dealing just with buyers. So the impact's really low, and I'll do some of those kinds of sales, but live auctions, rarely. I have customers, though, that are old school and aren't into this new internet thing, as they say, and they want us to do a live sale. And we've been put in wills and they've asked us to do that. So I have to be able to service my clients. So I look to try and, I can't do a big sale there. It just doesn't work. There's not enough room.
Okay.
So
Just a follow-up to that, can you control when customers come to your site?
by my timing, yes. And I do want to keep the fence and gate. So there's a gate, and when I'm not there, it's locked. And when we are holding a preview, for instance, it's an advertised preview and people know what times to come. When we sell items on one day and the next day they come to pick them up, we have a scheduled time when they come and pick things up, and that's advertised. And we're strict too. Time's money, and we don't hang out all day to come get your item. We do it. We give them a time frame for them to come and pick things up. So
Okay. As
yes,
you
we
know,
do.
Running Hill Road is a busy road during rush hour.
Yeah, in the early morning
And
and
the evening rush hour.
late afternoon.
Would you
yeah.
avoid those times?
Yeah, we normally would do a preview on a set of items, or a removal, I should say, at 8 o'clock till say noon. We do that in,
Rush hour though.
I hear you. I do it on auctions that I do in Congress Street, on on-site sales. I do it in many high-profile locations. We're talking about removal periods that maybe start at 8 o'clock and run till noon. We might be expecting 30 people, so we might see 5 people show up at 8 o'clock, which that would not be a burden on the rush hour. And quite frankly, I don't see big impacts of time. If it becomes a problem, again, I've never had an issue in 50 years, and I went to the first auction. So my point is if we see problems, we address them. I do get into parking situations where I need to have the police involved, and I need to have signs, and I need to do all of that. We're very cognizant of that. But if we see a detriment there, we're going to address it for sure. But I don't see it. It just doesn't, I don't get waves of people at 8 o'clock in the morning, even though I offer that timing.
And you can still control the time that people come in?
Sure can. Yes, you can. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, we can. Yep.
Probably you had a question?
Yeah, it relates to the phase 2 study that you're doing. And first off, just maybe to assuage your concerns, the town, due to changes in state and federal regulation, is now much more concerned on all of our at-risk watersheds. So I think you might just be encountering an issue from a timing perspective, not so much your property in particular or the Red Brook in particular. It's all of our at-risk watersheds are now being more heavily scrutinized. We're required to look at a number of our things, including setback requirements and otherwise. So just wanted to let you know it's not
Okay.
you.
Perfect timing.
But on that basis, you're going to continue and complete the phase 2 no matter what. You're going to complete the drillings. You're going to complete the site assessment.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we're moving forward with that. Unless something out of a left field comes and the property's destroyed.
Yeah, exactly.
If you
If
come up with
pull
all
back
these.
from the PSA entirely. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But-
right.
but assuming that we continue to
Our
march
intentions
forward.
are to buy this property. I need space.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, you got it.
Question. Can you clarify for me again, why you'd like to have? Thank you, Brian. Could you clarify for me one more time, why you would like to have the contingency of, or the condition rather, of the phase 2 environmental study removed from any approval we would have on this? Why?
It holds up my approval. I'm not approved. So what I'm worried about is what other conditions could you put in before I am approved? And to me, I have uncertainty and it's unclear. And so I find it hard to move forward if I don't know if I'm approved. And I'm spending lots of money now. I'm the drilling the wells next week. I'm on phase 2 of my reports. And I don't even know if I can do it here. And that's one of my biggest concerns. So they're drilling next week and they're moving forward, but I don't even have an approval. And it's unfortunate for me.
If we were to approve it though, and include the condition that this is approved pending the outcome of this phase 2 environmental study, would you still be able to proceed forward with this project?
Am I approved?
If we approve your appeal under the condition that the phase 2 environmental study suits your outcome, would you still be able to move forward?
If I could be assured I wouldn't have any other contingencies put into my approval.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
You follow me? I don't mind, like I said, if there's a dirty spot here, the phase 2 is going to speak for itself. Am I right? And so if I'm moving forward with the deal, okay, I don't have any trouble showing you my report and having the town be a partner with me to look at my report and move forward. I don't have any problem with that. But I don't know right now if I'm approved. I don't know what else is going to be thrown at me. Last night I was told I was approved with an approval based upon the Conservation Commission looking at this. And then it changed, unbeknownst to me, to this today, to an environmental sharing of the report. Fine, I like that. I'm happy to be a partner with you folks and move forward. But what else am I going to see? And I've got thousands of dollars into this, tens of thousands of dollars into this already, and more going next week. So I'm just concerned about getting an approval. And if I had assurances that there weren't going to be any other contingencies that come at me outside of environmental, I understand the environmental. We don't know what we're going to see in the report, and I'll work with everybody if we want to move forward. But I don't, outside of that environmental report, what else is coming at me? You follow me? That's what I'm getting at. So.
And I completely understand, and I empathize, and I understand. We're not privy to what goes on outside of
Mhm.
this room as far as what else you are up against as
Yeah.
far as trying to move this forward, but we're just looking just at this tonight. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm just going to read an email we received from, was this the only email that we received, public comment that we received on this, Brian? Well, I will once I have your answer. I suppose I should. I'll open this for public hearing. Now that I know this is the only email we have, are there other folks here that would like to speak on this miscellaneous appeal application? Okay, I'm going to read this email. This was received from Ronald Blanchard. Good afternoon, Brian. Years ago, 36 Running Hill Road, Goldsteins disassembled airplanes and transformers on their property. After a few years, they pushed the hazardous material over to 32 Running Hill Road, which I ended up purchasing. It had contaminated soil, and I spent around $500,000 to remediate and encapsulate per the EPA and the state of Maine. It stands to reason that 36 Running Hill Road has contaminated soil, even though some of it was moved to 32 Running Hill Road. If there is an expectation of paving the land at 36 Running Hill Road, it is an absolute mud zone when it rains, therefore it would require wastewater management. I had quite a sum of money to build a holding pond and drainage systems, and the town spent a lot of money cleaning Red Brook. Water draining from the site had to be monitored and controlled. What is meant by a small storage facility? Are they referring to the steel building on the site that is used as a warehouse for a few items? Since Scarborough does not have a sanitary sewer system, would this require a septic system to be installed if anyone is on site during the day? I would assume if it was going to be a small storage facility, they would have to pave the land. So I guess in response to that, do you have any intention of paving any of the property?
No, and I talked with our soil scientist about it, and I asked, because I was concerned about runoff and so forth as it related to any potential oils and contaminants, and I asked him, he says it's actually better off the way it is. He says you have compacted soil that is impervious. He says water is going to run off the top of this soil very easily. He says it's not, this has been compacted soil for decades and decades. So from an environmental standpoint, he looked at it and said, I don't think you're any better off putting pavement on here than you are to go with what you have for soils. He said, now, if we find something in the ground, it could change all of that. There might be an encapsulation issue to look at and that sort of thing. But as it exists, if you're just worried about runoff, he says, in fact, paving the property is going to create a stronger runoff towards Red Brook. I hear the email that I'm reading, and I have pictures from 1991 on the day that Mr. Blanchard removed all the soils from his property. They were not all soils that were put there by Danny Dumont. I know that there had been lawsuits between the two parties and on and on. I have pictures of, probably about 15 to 20 pictures of soils that were existing on Mr. Blanchard's site and soils that were moved over and buried over in Scarborough at another facility over at next to Scarborough Auto Parts. Mr. Dumont and in court testified that under oath that he pushed tires onto Mr. Blanchard's property. The Blanchard's property in their use of their property before Mr. Blanchard brought it had encroached on Mr. Dumont for tires and stuff. So he pushed tires back. And there was a theft issue and so forth about metals and on and on. But the long and the short was Mr. Dumont testified in court that he didn't push and pile up contaminated soils per se. It was mostly tires. And they have the pictures of the tires and all of his records. So I'm telling you what I've heard from him. I don't know what happened, but that's what I was told. So there's all kinds of stuff floating around on that. But what I do know is a VRAP was done, and we're looking at it, and we're doing our environmental studies, and we're concerned. Yeah, so we get it. Yeah,
And that phase 2 environmental study will give you the indication of where the VRAP is and if the number is
Oh, yeah,
required
yeah.
underneath where you are.
yes, it will, without question. I've looked at the phase 2 reports associated with the Blanchard property and the phase two and where the contaminant sites were in the drilling and all of that. And my environmental people at St. Germain have reviewed those reports as well. So they've got I've got 4 different soils scientists looking at this property now, and from various different levels. And so we're doing a thorough job. Again, I bought a property, or our family bought a property at Exit 8, and $500,000 later, we finally closed. When we got to the main turnpike, it stopped. And so our eyes are wide open here. We're not buying this property if it's dirty, and we understand Mr. Blanchard and his concerns, and I get it.
All right, thank you.
So, yep.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I just want to comment, just to be transparent. I carefully listened to what you've had to say,
Thank you.
and I trust that you are interested in protecting the environment.
And
I would not be comfortable eliminating the planning board's condition. I just want you to know that.
okay, that's fine. We're not friends anymore. Just kidding.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just, I'll make a similar comment, but with a slightly different outcome. The planning board has already put this condition on. It's not necessary for us to rule on that condition one way or the other. You're already in the process of doing the environmental impact study, and one way or another, you'll know what the outcome is. I don't think it's necessary for us to be redundant and to state this as a condition in our findings. You know, our role as a zoning board of appeals is to decide whether or not this site is approved for the use that you want to use it for,
I agree.
which is different than what it's currently being used for, and that's it. If we want to place additional restrictions on it, fine, okay. But the condition that it was placed on by the planning board isn't anything that we necessarily have to do anything about.
That's the way I interpret it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so right now, what we're going to do is go into different questions here. I know we've gone to great length for a discussion. Right now, we'll close the public hearing. So I know we've gone through and discussed this at length, but what we're going to do is go through each of the criteria. You can just read your answers back for the record. So letter A.
Do you mind if I follow along with you?
Of course.
Yeah, I have that with me.
Sure, yeah, go ahead. So, yeah, so for the board, we'll be looking at letters A through I for the miscellaneous appeal. Letter A,
I'm
oh,
getting
sorry,
there.
I'll give you a moment, I apologize. Don't mean to rush you.
No worries. Okay. Bear with me. Agenda. Yeah. I think I'm with you on this.
Yes, I mixed it up with the other one.
Am I looking at the addendum to Big Mountain Realty Trust miscellaneous appeal?
Yes, there should be like, so our first one, letter A, it's,
Okay. All right, yeah, I'm not seeing that here.
the first one
Oh,
is,
there,
yeah, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or
Okay, there.
operation.
I'm with
It's
you.
that section we're gonna start
Yeah,
with.
I'm back there now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So letter A, the proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of design or operation. And you can just read your answers right.
Yeah,
there.
the storage of the auction items and the sale of said items will not create unhealthy conditions, and they won't emit pollution or air into the water. They won't. There's no septic system there, but we do intend to put a small septic system for commercial use in the bathroom, or a well, I should say. And of course, we'll follow the local codes for that.
Okay. Letter B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing and foreseeable traffic in its vicinity.
The small and isolated auction events will generally have low attendance, and they will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions.
Letter C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood or require a substantially greater degree of municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood.
Yes. And as we've stated here in the previous section, the proposed use will have less of an intrusive effect in the neighborhood than current use by Goldstein Steel. There'll be no cutting of scrap steel or torches or shears, which is currently allowed on site. And therefore, the proposed use would not require any more fire or police protection, and indeed would likely require less. And by the way, we are compliant with fire stuff and so forth. Yeah.
Very good, thank you. Letter D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies.
Nothing to be stored on the site or sold at auction will lead to sedimentation or erosion or will have an adverse effect on water supplies.
Letter E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development.
That proposed use will generally mirror the existing use in terms of size, proximity to other structures, and density of development. However, the intensity of use and the visual impact will likely be a great improvement, as the proposed use will be for the storage of and sale of auction items rather than an automobile graveyard, scrap steel, and the like.
If located in a shoreland zone, I guess, is this located in a shoreland zone?
No, it is not.
All right, we can proceed to letter G. The applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
The trust has secured a purchase and sale agreement to purchase the property located at 36 Running Hill Road in Scarborough and intends to lease the property to the company. The trust will have sufficient right, title, and or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use.
Letter H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section.
Yes, the trust and company have the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section, as well as to comply with any condition imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to section 4-1-5 of the ordinance as set forth in section 415 of the ordinance. Such conditions may include, but are not limited to, specifications for type of vegetation, increased setback in yards, specified sewage disposal and water supply facilities, landscaping and planting screens, hours of operation, operation controls, professional inspection and maintenance, sureties, locations of piers, docks, parking, and signs, and types of construction.
Letter I, the proposed use will be compatible with existing conditions in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation. I guess, could you reiterate your hours of operation?
Yeah, there will be no additional generation of noise from the subject property site, and the proposed use will be compatible with the existing uses in the neighborhood. Hours of operation on checkout days, typically 8 o'clock until 2. On checkout days when people come and pick up items that they purchase, should we have a sale online there. And then drop-off periods could be throughout the day. Typically, use would be a normal 8 to 5 business day, but we may not go to the site for a week or a month. It really is going to be haphazard, but it would be during normal business hours. I'm not going to say we won't go pick up a plow truck at 9 o'clock at night to go plow, so the normal business hours.
Good enough, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess at this point, any questions or additional comments from board members? Okay. Then what we're going to do, we've already gone through the public comment. What we're going to do is deliberate amongst ourselves and the board. If we have further questions for you, we will ask.
All right.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's go through for the first one here, and we'll go through one by one, then we'll all vote at the, after discussing each point. The proposed use will not create unsanitary or unhealthful conditions by reason of sewage disposal, emissions to the air or water, or other aspects of its design or operation? And I'm going to look to you, Mr. Freilinger.
I think the applicant has shown that they've met the requirements for this particular item. And I think we need to review it in particular with respect to number one, the phase 2 study that they're currently conducting, and number two, the current use of the property. The current use of the property likely has higher risk for this, and the proposed use mitigates the risks associated with the scrapyard currently on site. So I think they've met this, and we should feel comfortable moving forward.
Agree, Mr. Bork?
No further comments.
Okay, Ms. Stevenson
I have nothing further to add.
and Ms. Snow?
Nothing to add?
Okay. As Mr. Freilinger said, the applicant's conducting a phase 1 and 2 environmental assessment to determine the existence of any kind of, hazard material, contamination of the soil. And the applicant has stated they will mitigate any hazardous or contaminated situations or scenarios on the site if it's financially feasible for them to purchase the property and go forward with it. But ultimately, this purchase and sale agreement is not going to go through if it's determined to not be financially feasible, and that would give us more than enough indication that there is significant contamination there, that they're not going to be looking to go. So that being said, all those in favor of letter A being met, please raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. Letter B, the proposed use will not create unsafe vehicular or pedestrian traffic conditions when added to existing foreseeable traffic in its vicinity, excuse me. And I'm going to start down here with you, Ms. Snow.
The applicant has indicated that there'll be minimal vehicle trips generated from the proposed use. There'll be low attendance auctions or drop-offs or pickups. The site is large enough to allow vehicles to enter and turn around, so there's no backing out onto Running Hill Road, and it should be adequate.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stevenson.
Nothing further to add.
Okay, Mr. Bork.
The applicant has indicated that he has the ability to control the time of the day that buyers, will come to the site to pick up their auction materials.
Thank you. Mr. Freilinger.
I think part of this too is it's relative to existing, including the Goldstein properties use and foreseeable traffic in the vicinity. The existing Goldstein facility also has normal business hours, including drop-offs and pickups during both normal and rush hour times. So relative to that, there's no change in traffic. I think he's met the requirements of this one.
I'll add as well that he's proposing to have general hours from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so at least they're dodging the rush hour at the end of the day. And so again, I don't think it's a real substantial amount of traffic that's going to be going into here. The applicant has stated that equipment that is being auctioned and purchased are meant for people to be going onto the property and receiving the said products and leaving the vicinity with them, not really meant for window shopping, so to speak. And so folks to stop and buy or anything like that. That being said, all those in favor of letter B being met, please raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you. Letter C, the proposed use will not create public safety problems, which would be substantially different from those created by existing uses in the neighborhood, or require a substantially greater degree in municipal fire or police protection than existing uses in the neighborhood. Mr. Freilinger.
I agree. Again, I don't think there's anything that's come up in the application or in the discussions today that would indicate this hasn't been met. And as the applicant notes, there will not be cutting torches or sort of high-risk industrial equipment on site other than equipment being sold. So I think this one is adequately met.
Thank you. Mr. Bork.
The applicant also has an excellent record of public safety over many, many years. And there's no reason to believe that that won't continue.
Ms. Stevenson.
No comments.
Ms. Snow.
Nothing further.
Yeah, the applicant is, for my bit, the applicant has stated more than once that they don't anticipate any additional fire or police protection here. And again, as you pointed out, Mr. Freilinger, they're not doing any sort of high risk operations here. That being said, all those finding letter C in compliance, please raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. Letter D, the proposed use will not result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies. I will start with you, Ms. Snow.
The applicant does not intend to pave the existing gravel or earth material, which is already compacted, and there should not be any further impact to the water supply.
Ms. Stevenson,
No extra comments.
Mr. Bork,
The location is in an aquifer protection overlay zone.
Mr. Fralinger,
Again, I think the applicant has indicated that they're not going to pave the surface, which I think is a positive. We generally speaking would view hardscape as being a detriment to the water supply as opposed to keeping compacted soils in place. And they're also, again, the phase 1 and phase 2 remediation or phase 1 and phase 2 environmental study will indicate whether there are issues to be addressed. And the applicant has shown the willingness to take a look at that as both part of their PSA and part of their ongoing ownership of the property. So no issues.
thank you. I'll add that, yes, they're pending the outcome of this phase 2 environmental study to sort of see what the impact is existing on the property. Me personally, for this, I struggle with this one only because, we're continuing in non-conforming use in this space, which if the gold seams weren't originally there, would we allow this business to go into that location? That's my only concern about it. Will the proposed use result in sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies? I don't believe so. The applicant has stated that they have a cleanup procedure in place where they inspect vehicles or engines that come in for any sort of oil leaks or things like that. So that is obviously something that is very positive for this particular comment. All those in favor of letter D being
Mr.
met?
Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
Can I add something for that? I think we should look, the property next to it is a storage facility, a used storage facility essentially, but it's still a storage facility, and it's hardscaped. So, and I think most of, I'll posit this, it's up for discussion obviously, but I think the town is comfortable with that use. And to have a similar storage use without hardscape would probably be something that would pass muster for us, given given what Keenan has in terms of its history of property stewardship, et cetera. So I hear what you're saying. Like, non-conforming uses are always sort of something we got to consider. But I think in the scheme of this part of the RF district and what's been deemed as being okay in this, I think we probably would do that. So I'll just offer that as a counterpoint. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. All those in favor of letter D being met, please raise your hand. Okay. That's 4. All those opposed, I will oppose this one. So that's 4-1. Letter E, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to physical size, visual impact, intensity of use, proximity to other structures, and density of development. I'll start with you, Mr. Fralinger.
again, relative to the use of the next door property and relative to what's been there in the past and other properties on Running Hill Road, I think the applicant has demonstrated that this is in line with this part of the RF district. So I concur on this one.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bork.
I agree, and nothing further to add.
Ms. Stevenson,
No further comments.
Ms. Snow.
Nothing further.
Okay. As you said, Mr. Fralinger, there is a compatible, nearly compatible business directly adjacent to this property as far as within the sphere of being compatible. With respect to physical size and visual impact, theoretically, there will be less of a visual impact here because they'll be moving a lot of the scrap and junk cars that is going to be there now, and ideally replacing them with equipment that will be there very sort of transitory to coin a phrase. So that being said, all those in favor of letter E being met, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Letter F, if located in a shoreline zone, is depicted on the Town of Scarborough official shoreline zoning map. Mr. Longstaff, can you confirm that this is not located within a shoreline zone?
Mr. Chair, this property is not in a shoreline zone.
Okay, does anyone have any further comment on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of letter F being met? As unanimous. Letter G, the applicant has sufficient right, title, or interest in the site of the proposed use to be able to carry out the proposed use. Ms. Snow.
The applicant has supplied us with a purchase and sales agreement for the property.
Very good. Ms. Stevenson?
Nothing further to add.
Mr. Bork?
Agreed.
Mr. Fralinger? Agreed. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward here. The applicant has stated they have this purchase and sale agreement, which we've discussed earlier, is all the documentation they need in order to come before us and go through this appeals process. All those in favor of letter G being met, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Letter H, the applicant has the technical and financial ability to meet the standards of this section and to comply with any conditions imposed by the Board of Appeals pursuant to subsection 5 of this section. Mr. Fralinger.
The Keenan Auction Company has indicated a long experience in this type of business. Also indicated that they have purchased and remediated and installed similar storage sites elsewhere in Maine with similar conditions. So yes, I believe they've demonstrated this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bork.
I think the applicant has provided ample evidence that they will comply with the highest level of standards in running their business.
Ms. Stevenson.
I agree with everything that's been said so far.
Ms. Snow.
I'm still pondering this one because he is unaware if he can comply with the phase 2 remediation. So I don't quite know how to square that.
Sure. If I can offer some
Sure.
insight there, I guess.
I welcome it.
Looking from the perspective of, coming from the perspective of his technical and financial ability to do that, I feel that they have proven that they have the financial and technical ability to do so, and that's going to inform their decision on whether or not to pursue this project. For a cost benefit analysis, if there isn't a return on investment that's enough for them to mitigate any upfront costs of the potential contamination in the space, they're not going to go through with it. And if we maintain and if we uphold a condition that this is approved pending the outcome of phase 2 environmental study, and they do not go forward with the purchase of the property, that sort of signals a much deeper issue that the town may have to deal with.
And where is that phase 2 in these steps and what we're approving? Where exactly is that condition falling?
That condition, so that phase 2 environmental study is ongoing at the moment. Those results
I
are,
understand, but where in our building, I guess, or where in this?
I can,
sorry, I don't understand. Go ahead, Brian.
so the place to impose conditions would be when you got to the actual decision.
Right.
So once you've gone through these requirements and you've done your findings, and then somebody makes a motion to approve, then they can add that condition in. And just for some perspective, and I don't pretend to know everything there is to know about a phase 2. It's been about 100 years since I was involved in one, back up north with Steelstone Industries. And we had a lot of buried underground fuel tanks that we had to remove. And that was when I got involved with it and thrown into the fire, so to speak. So it's been a while. But in listening to the applicant, and I did not attend the planning board meeting, but just on the face of this condition that they've put on their advisory opinion, it seems like it's just sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, because if the phase 2, it's already been stated, if the phase 2 shows a lot of problems, the applicant will walk away. Therefore, the approval of this miscellaneous appeal dies because they will not start their operation within 6 months of this approval. This approval is good for 6 months. Starting that would be doing mitigation if they so chose to do that. And that would start, if they undertook that anytime within 6 months from now. That would preserve their approval if you were to approve it. If they walk away, the approval dies, no harm done. The existing business is still there, nothing changes. So it's curious the way the planning board put that condition in there, because they just said pending the phase 2 approval. It's sort of open. So what? You get the phase 2 approval. The applicant said he'll share it with the town. Maybe the condition should be sharing the phase 2 approval with the town, because they're either going to do the mitigation work or not. If they don't, the approval dies. If they do, the approval lives because they've chose to make that investment in the site. They can't operate unless they do the mitigation that the phase 2 requires, is my understanding. So I don't really know what the problem is. We can approve, or I would say we, the board, could approve this, so if it so chose, upon the condition that the phase 2 mitigation efforts are either undertaken and the use is established, or the applicant walks away and this purchase and sales agreement dies and the use dies.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence.
I don't know if that helps clear it up.
I really can't understand the applicant's concern about having that condition, or that's part of it.
I think the applicant is mostly concerned with additional conditions that we were to place on them that may have some financial or technical bearing on them. I can't, at this point, we haven't really been discussing any of them. Correct, and we have the ability to create additional conditions on this as well. And I guess their concern is that he doesn't know what additional conditions that we would be imposing here. We'll see what I do. But usually there is something hinted at that at this point, so I don't think that's likely to happen. But for your original question, I apologize, I wasn't understanding, but the conditions are taken up into account when we move on the approval.
And I would
You're
just
very
add,
welcome.
Mr. Chair, if I could, if the board so chose to add any additional conditions, when it got to that approval, the applicant has the ability to either meet those or not. If they choose not to meet those conditions or disagree with those conditions, they could certainly, the board could entertain a counter offer, if you will. That's a negotiation. You could do that. I think the applicant's concern was, can they leave here tonight knowing they have an approval or not? That to me is really the bottom line. And I think my answer to that is, I think they can leave here knowing whether they have an approval or not. It's just a matter of coming up with whatever conditions the board may or may not choose to impose on that.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Fralinger?
One final, and it might not be relevant to this particular issue, but I want to raise it. If we weren't to approve this, or if the owner walks away, the existing non-conforming use remains. So, and Goldstein will continue to, pry apart cars and store metals on the site and let stuff run off of them into the soils and all the rest. So I don't want to. I just don't want to lose sight that there is an existing non-conforming use. Yeah, exactly. But there's a existing non-conforming use, and it is what it is. So that's the only point I want to make. So
Seeing that, all those in favor of letter H being met? That is unanimous. Letter I, the last one, the proposed use will be compatible with existing uses in the neighborhood with respect to the generation of noise and hours of operation. I'll start with you, Ms. Snow.
The applicant's proposal is a less intensive use than what's going on at the site. There'll be no additional noise. He has fewer hours of operation, and there's only occasional drop-offs and pickups. It's not on a daily basis. And it says here he's willing to install more buffering if the town wishes it.
All right. Ms. Stevenson?
I'll just add that the hours of operation are reasonable within business hours, with the maybe occasional exception.
I would also add that the bulk of the actual auctioning will be online as opposed to on site, and that's less intense than the existing use.
Mr. Fralinger?
Nothing further to add.
Great. Yeah, I'll reiterate what I mentioned earlier. His proposed hours of operation, though not set in stone, they're looking at 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Those are very reasonable business hours to maintain. There's no, generation of noise and hours of operation. They're not going to be, as you mentioned, they're not going to be taking cars apart or taking equipment apart and creating that sort of ancillary noise associated with those types of operations here. It'll simply be moving equipment, bringing stuff in, and taking them out. All those in favor of letter I being met, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve appeal number 2739. Mr. Bork,
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I would also like to entertain an amendment to this to apply the following condition. Our approval is pending the outcome of the Phase 2 environmental study, and providing that information, or providing the results of the environmental study to the town.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor of that being included?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I propose a slight modification to that and simply pending the submission of the findings to the town.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I-
just,
I like that a little bit better. That's a better, because again, the Phase 2 environmental study doesn't hold them to anything. It's for them just to make a decision whether or not they are going to go through with it or not. So thank you for clarifying that. Can you please restate that so that Brian can capture that more accurately?
Yeah, so I would move for a condition that the approval be conditional on the receipt of the completed Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental study.
Okay, I like that much better. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Mr. Bork, excellent. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
That's right.
Yes, that is unanimous. Okay, so now we have the full motion. It's all put together here. Are there any further conditions or comments that we wish to add at this time? More conditions. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of appeal number 2739 as currently presented, please raise your hands. That is four yes and 1 no. I am the 1 no, because I did not agree with that one finding earlier. So the appeal passes. It is approved.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, which one did you not agree with? I didn't notice that.
I did not agree on letter D with regard to sedimentation or erosion.
Got it. Okay, just
Yeah.
missed it.
Yep, no, it's okay. It's okay to agree to disagree. Thank you very much for your time. All right, we are going to move on to our last appeal of the evening. This is, excuse me one moment. This is appeal number 2740, special exception, home occupation by Kelly and Tom Roth. This is 333 Broad Turn Road, Assessor's Map R005, Lot 27A. And if there is someone here representing that would love to come and talk about it, come on up to the podium. Excuse me.
Good evening. My name's Tom Roth from 333 Broad Turn Road in Scarborough. And I think I'm way underprepared here, but I want to kind of just get a feel for what I need to do here.
Okay.
We own this property. It abuts the land trust, the Fuller Farm Land Trust. And so right now, we have a seaweed business here in Scarborough. We've been in business for about 17 years. And we use the property to dry seaweed on in the fields. Not all of them, but in a section of the fields. We have about 280 drying tables in the field. And we put about 10,000 pounds of seaweed on a couple times a week, and we dry it out. It's not poured on the tables where it's thick. It doesn't decompose. So there's no smell involved. And none of our neighbors have ever said anything. And we're in and out. But we're thinking about shifting to using it for some campsites, high-end tents, not just bring in your own tent and set it up. So we'd like to put around 7 units, 7 tents on the property. and make it more of a destination, not just, again, not just somebody come in and set up their tent and spend the night and then move on. There would be a 3-night minimum. And so, and there would only be 4 people allowed in each site. So the 2 fields, and I apologize, I don't have anything. It looks like a 3-year-old did that, and I kind of did. But like I said, we're only looking for up to 7 units now, with a maximum of 12, if this all works out. The company we go through is called Tenter. And so they'll supply the tent, they'll set it up. It comes with its own solar shower. It also comes with what they call a loo. So it's a portable toilet thing that they have in the tent. It's insured by them. There's $4 million worth of insurance per tent. So it's highly insured. And again, we're not looking for a bunch of college kids coming in and setting up a party and carrying on. We, our kind of goal is here is to give them many of amenities, right? Take them out on the boat and show them Casco Bay or the marshes of Scarborough. Take them on a seaweed foraging trip where they could come back and dry their own seaweed on. And we get our customers asking, I mean, all the time we take them out for just to show them what we do. So we thought, well, you know, maybe a chance to make a little extra income on these fields that have been sitting here empty for quite some time. We would allow pets because we're right next to the land trust and there's nothing but people with the dogs. And we also would widen our driveway. It's only a driveway right now. We would make it a lane so that we can get a vehicle coming in and out. So there's no bottleneck. You know, somebody's trying to go out, someone's trying to turn in. And again, with only 6 or 7 sites, I don't think it'll create any problems. Hours of operation, normal, you know, probably from 8 to 6, people coming and going. I mean, of course, if they're going to be out doing something on Old Orchard Beach and they come back at 9 o'clock at night, that's fine. But we would limit fires to be put out by 10 o'clock at night. And there would only be fire rings, no open fires, nothing like that. Bathrooms, we were considering like a porta potty, but then we found a little better solution, these composting toilets. They seem the new thing. We could use those so we don't have to put in a leach field or a septic system. That's one of the things we'd like to avoid the first year or 2 of business. We don't know if this is gonna take off or just, we don't have a clue. So I didn't really want to put a $25,000 septic system in and just find out that it's in there for no reason. So that's why I'm at. So showers too, we would like to put in 2 showers. And with those, we would put in a leach field so the water could have a place to go. We had the soils tested on the entire property. It's around 10 acres. There's a house there, but sits pretty far back. So the house would be not in view. Well, you could see the house, but it would be pretty much away, quite a ways away from it, each tent site. The tents will be on the tree lines, not seen from the road. The only people will see it are the people that are walking on the land trust would have a view of a couple of the tents, but we're trying to keep them secluded. Water, we would like to run a water line from our home down. And the water, of course, will, you know, be tested. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty new at this. So that's kind of what we were planning on doing. And I leave it up to you guys to ask questions.
Okay. Do you have, and normally I'd like to see, I guess you're talking about a tent supplier, like a glamping tent
Exactly.
supplier. Is this a franchise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess I would like to see is product information.
Okay, Kelly, do we?
Is that? didn't see like.
Oh, I know, we're not very prepared.
It's okay.
I
guess
could, yeah. Do you want to see what I have here? Do you need me to make copies at another time and bring it?
that might be a better idea, but let's go through just some comments that we have first. And then-
Okay.
And maybe one option would be, I see we have some folks here tonight. We can open it to public comment to see what some folks may have some thoughts on this as well.
Great.
And I would maybe suggest that take the comments and information here. We may want to table this, give you a chance to assemble a lot of answers together, maybe get a little more information together.
Yeah.
Into a packet. Obviously, not every application comes with professionally stamped engineer or survey drawings, but we do like to see a little bit more information.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess what I personally would like to see in this packet would be photographs of the site,
Okay.
maybe a Google Earth image printed out, just annotated where things are going to go. Distances to the nearest property, the nearest adjacent property or your neighbors. If there is if you have some kind of business plan or anything like that, or just the information you provided here is good, but just a little bit more detail.
Okay.
Like I said, site plan with rough dimensions. That house that you mentioned that was in view at the end of the 10-acre plot, is that your home or is that
Yes.
someone? That is your home,
Yeah.
and that's your primary residence?
No,
Okay,
no, not at the moment.
Okay.
We live over in Buxton.
gotcha.
We rent it out.
Okay, but it is your property? though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess those are my quick questions right now. Again, photos of this tent supplier. The tent supplier as a franchise must have some sort of informational.
Oh, they
package
do.
to
They have a
share
ton
with
of it.
you.
I have it here.
Yeah,
So-
I would propose making copies of that and probably submitting that with your application.
Okay.
Next go around.
Okay.
But let's go through and any comments from the board first. I'll start with you, Mr. Bork.
Thank you. In reviewing the way you answered questions, you were saying no or yes or whatever. What we need is evidence. You need to be able to show us why something complies or doesn't.
Okay.
And so this is just not adequate. And I would certainly favor tabling this until, such time as you're prepared to.
Okay.
come
So
back
how
with-
do I know to get these? Do I do a study? Do I do an impact study on the neighborhood or something? I mean, some of these questions will we be making a lot of noise? And
What I would suggest is you spend some time with Brian or somebody else in his department that could help you.
okay.
And looking at sedimentation or erosion or have an adverse effect on water supplies. Your sample answer in here would be, you could say that you are providing a leach field for your outside showers. You have compostable toilets that aren't going to have any effect on the water supply or environment as well.
Okay.
So things like that we're going to need to see in here in order to really go forward with it. If we were to continue forward with this tonight, I don't believe that it would pass.
No. And I apologize for coming in like I did. But
And that's okay. Appreciate the questions. We normally don't do this kind of, I'll say, walk through on it, but here we are, and we will answer your questions for you. Miss Stevenson, please.
Yeah, I have I know we're not actually maybe entertaining this, but something to consider when you're doing your application. You said that you would allow pets and there's nothing about waste removal.
Okay.
So maybe some more information about that would be
Okay.
helpful for us. If you've learned anything from the past couple cases that you've listened to, we ask a lot of questions about environmental impacts, some logistical things, just more detail.
yeah.
Just more
okay.
detail.
Okay. No, I understand now. Yeah. I just came in here shooting from the hip. So, never had a campground. So,
Oh, that's okay. Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Snow.
Thank you. You must have well water at your house, do you?
we do.
So you'll check to see that the well is adequate to accommodate all those other people?
Yeah, I mean, we used to run a home business there years ago, and we would take, so Katahdin Labs would do all of our testing, and they do our testing on all of our, so we have it, like I said, the seaweed company, And so we have all of our seaweeds tested for heavy metals through Katahdin Labs, and we would
Well,
use that.
besides quality, I was thinking about quantity. I mean, would one well service?
Oh, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Right, they may have, you may want to consult a surveyor or an engineer that may, and then again, this is going to cost a bit of money for it, but if you're proposing for something this large, you're going to want to have a lot of that sussed out.
Okay. Good. Yeah, well, that's okay.
Mr. Frelinger?
The other thing is you'll notice from the special exemption things, a number of these really talk about neighborhood impacts, vehicular traffic, parking, hours of operation, those sorts of things, all of which will be very much of interest to your neighbors and to the land trust property next to you. So I'm not sure if folks here to talk about that, but we would definitely encourage you as part of this to do to do the footwork, to do the shoe leather work, to talk to your neighbors and get their sense of things and get their sense of where their fears or concerns or even support comes from for what may impact, what the impacts of this may be. So again, and first off, I really want to appreciate you being upfront and open and saying, hey, you're new at this. This is you're kind of you've dove in the pool by coming to the meeting, but you kind of know that you're not swimming very well. I appreciate just the humility on that. So it helps us kind of guide you through the process. It also helps too. I know there's probably members of the public here who want to talk about it. We're going to give you a chance, but we're also going to give you another chance probably as well, because we want to do this the right way.
I guess, are there any comments, questions at this time from board members? Okay. I think right now, sorry, I'd like to open it to the public floor because we have some folks here. So if you wouldn't mind just having a seat for a moment.
Okay.
I'll open the floor to the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Yep, just come right up to the podium. State your name, your address, and what you would like to say.
My name is William Coates. I live at 335 Broad Turn, which abuts the left-hand side of his property.
So the
land trust is on the right side.
And you're on the other side. Got it.
One of the biggest things that concerns me is a fence. I shouldn't have to put up with, people coming over, animals coming over. And it's roughly close to 1,000 feet of fencing. And another thing I was reading in this here, that they're saying about vehicle travel, pedestrian traffic and stuff like that. It's only going to be a matter of time before someone gets hit out there on the road. I've had deer killed laying in my driveway. And I went this past summer to the police department to see if they could come out and do radar or whatever. And they said, well, we can put a box on the telephone pole, do a study, yada, yada, yada. I never saw no boxes out there. I haven't seen a cop out there in days. And I just don't want it to, we've lived over there over 30 years. And it's going to be, I know how some of these campsites are, not this particular one, but campsites that noisy. He's always screaming and hollering. If they get into the who hit John, you never know what they're going to do. And that's about it right now. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming up. Anyone else?
Robert Baisley, and I lived at 335 Broad Turn Road, grew up there in late 60s, 70s. actually owned the land for a while as well. It's family farmland, used it. I was in a golf course construction business, had a lot of construction equipment in and out of there. I actually built the existing driveway that's there. And we did have problems. We had a lot of road problems, accidents right there because of speed, which was what Bill was trying to articulate. Unfortunately, both ways, because there's a curve right there. So anything that would increase the amount of traffic there should be addressed. There's numerous ways of addressing that, I think, but but there is the potential. One of the things too, read through the new zoning guidelines that were done in 2020, and notice there's no definition of camping. And furthermore, I came in tonight with a lot of questions, more questions than concerns, as you had already pointed out, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. And one of the things, there's no definition of glamour camping, or what'd you call it, glam camping? Yeah. I'm glad that based upon what my mother had told me, and I came down earlier today and looked at your application and stuff, it really changed my whole perception of what was going to take place tonight. And, it's something that is scaled down. But one of the things I'd like to see addressed, because I've done a lot of clamping, I've done it with friends and stuff like that. My youngest son now is 19, but, and as you mentioned, you're targeting families. And one of the things that we always did, taking the kids with us, we usually took 2 or 3 of their friends. I can remember the ML being loaded up with the 4 bike racks, plus we had a couple up on the top, and head up to Acadia, and we did a lot of camping up there. Well, when you go into these camping grounds, there should be more adult supervision, but there's a lot of adult supervision that's not there, and the kids are just flying around with their bikes. And my concern is inside whatever you have for a road structure, will that accommodate bikes, number one? Number two, how do we make sure that those bikes don't get out onto the broad turn road? Because if they go out onto the broad turn road, there's no bike lane there, there's no forgiveness whatsoever. And I, last spring, sat and waited for my mother, and within a half an hour, between the hours of 4:30 and 5 o'clock, over 117 cars went by at her driveway. And, we kind of hold our breath every time we go out her driveway. And basically we have to roll down the windows and listen for cars coming. Well, there's a new wrinkle with that now. More and more electric cars, you can't hear them coming. So, but I'm really concerned, and I don't know how much insurance you can get, but if a child gets killed out on the road there. So one of the questions I also had, have you talked with the Scarborough Land Trust to see if you can have direct access from the camping site?
No, I haven't.
So to avoid the broad turn road?
No, I have not.
Okay. The other thing too, in talking with my friends this afternoon, I said, what's your definition of the glamour camping? All of them had a little bit different definitions, but they all came down to one thing: electricity. Are you going to have electrical supply to each one of these tents for heat and air conditioning?
No, I would not.
See, and that might be a problem. Like this summer was extremely humid, and most everyone gravitated to air conditioning.
Each of the tents comes with a solar panel, whether or not it would run an air conditioner, but it would move a fan, right? That's about it. There would be no air conditioning in these tents.
Well, would you be open to running electrical conduit underground to the campgrounds, to the tents?
I mean, I would absolutely, but maybe not, I'm so skeptical because I know nothing about this industry. I mean, I was a commercial fisherman. and then I'm a seaweed farmer and harvester, and I'm stepping in areas I don't know. And that's-
Yeah, one quick thing. Unfortunately, so we need to capture your audio. So you have to come up and
It-
say it, but
if-
maybe it might be best if you answer all your questions,
Ask
state
the
all your
questions,
questions
yes.
first.
And
then you can get a
respond.
chance to
Yeah.
respond afterwards, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Rather than the back and forth, because we got to capture it on the mic for the record.
Yeah.
I don't mean to offend or anything like that, but that's just how we have to do it. So why don't you go ahead, sir, and keep going.
Okay. There is a lot of competition in that industry now. It's picked up in popularity. The places I've been up to at Cato are absolutely beautiful. I would really like to see what type of structure. To the other end of the spectrum, Point Sebago has something similar that's on a deck, a structure with a canvas over it that resembles a tent that, well, they're running a special on it for $150 a night right now.
Mhm.
So, so there can be a huge difference in the type of things that could be proposed here. And we'd really like to see what will be proposed. But the Broad Turn Road is a problem with the speed up through there. It is 45. As a kid, it was unmarked, so it was 45 when we were kids. And it typically, I don't know, did the police actually put those sensors up to monitor the speed? At any rate, I'm guessing the average speed through there is around 55 to 60, if you was to actually measure it. And, so allowing that speed to go unchecked creates a huge safety issue for anything that's being proposed here tonight. So, the other thing too is, another question I do have, who's going to run the business? Who's going to be there at night to make sure that no one is being loud? It would be nice if you guys were living there at the house. I don't know if I've heard different things from different neighbors. Someone said that you may be moving back there. That's another question. Will you be there to supervise any loud people? It's nice to put rules on paper. The question I have that I've seen, because I used to sell real estate, many times with these campgrounds, they have trouble getting the police to enforce something that's beyond the town ordinance. So if the town ordinance says you can be loud to 11 o'clock at night, and I'm not sure what Scarborough is at this point, he may be handicapped and cannot do anything about that. So, if he calls the police was going to revert back to the town ordinance. But it still will generate a lot of potential complaints. I also lived on 28 Dunstan Landing Road in the Wild Duck Campgrounds at the end of that. Different scenario. Speed limit on that street was 25. Constant problems with people, with the campers speeding on that road. My son's dog got hit and he stopped. And because what was happening, my son was playing with a ball. When rolling down the driveway, the dog Biscuit also could play with the soccer ball, ran out in the street. My son stopped, but the dog ran out into the street. And when he realized my son stopped, the guy stepped on the accelerator and ran over my dog, or my son's dog. And one of the things I'm concerned about the glamour camping, you probably are going to have very high-end people in there, such as the Wild Duck Campground. They can be very arrogant. And sometimes some of them feel they are above the rules. So I don't have anything really negative about the Wild Duck, but I do have negativity towards some of the campers that are there. So they're not the best people to, as neighbors sometimes. And So, have I covered all the questions? Okay. By the way, my mother's owned the land there since 1968. 68? Okay. I'm not going to argue with her.
Best not to.
So, you know, we know what the land is. Unfortunately, I think, as you already probably know, early spring or anytime we have a rainy period, that ground gets soft. And I've been stuck in many, many times in it. It's a silty clay. So here again, it'd be nice to know what kind of pathway you're putting in. Vehicles, are you gonna, a lot of people coming in will come in from out of state. They're gonna wanna call local people that they know and have them come visit. Do you have accommodations for guest parking? Would be another concern as well. So those are my questions. And then, you know,
No, I appreciate it, and don't feel the need to necessarily address all of these now, since I think the position of the board, and thank you very much. Was that all your questions?
that is all my questions. I still have some other concerns. I talked with Bill. Moving forward, and of course, this was prefaced before we saw the proposal, but he was thinking about a stockade fence, the length of the property from Broad Turn Road down to the back property line. There was concerns that campers might be coming over and grabbing firewood. However, with glam camping, they don't bring axes and saws with them. You know, they expect the wood to be cut there already for them. So I don't know how much of an issue that would be, but it would be nice if it does move forward to make sure that there's no problems there.
Sure.
With entering onto the property to put up a 6-foot stockade fence. So.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. So, Tom, I would say that,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, go ahead, Mr. Frelinger.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't want to put the applicant, I think the board has made clear that we're probably going to table this for the evening. And I don't want to put the applicant in the position of making business plans or writing up changes to a business plan in a public forum on a broadcast of the ZBA. And I don't think we should be in the position of being on record at this point for specific objections to the board until we give the applicant an opportunity to come back with a more appropriate and complete application. So I might suggest that I move to table this at this point.
Okay. Is there Ms. Snow seconds? So discussion very quickly. I'll say, Tom, you've heard all the comments that everyone's here said tonight. You may want to listen back to the YouTube recording, because this will all be posted on the Town of Scarborough YouTube website. So you can go through and kind of hear the feedback that you've heard from folks. Like I've heard about, tent suppliers, accommodating bike traffic on the property, a fence for protection, signage for where you can go, can't go, coordination potentially with neighbors and the land trust. There's a lot of things that have been said here tonight. So I would probably go through and just sort of re-listen and kind of jot down and see, what are these answers that I can provide and pull together a more complete application
Okay.
for you.
No, I agree, and I appreciate it. And I understand their concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. It is a bad road. And I mean, it's really hard to pull out of their driveway and our driveway.
Sure.
Because you just
sure.
don't see very well.
Right.
But I'll get the answers to their questions and we can try this again. I hope.
I would say working with Mr. Longstaff on it, but just for the record, we are in the middle of, we're going to table this now. And Mr.
And while we're
Longstaff,
still in discussion of
Yes.
that motion,
go ahead.
does the applicant have any specific questions of the board before we table it?
No, I think they,
Just wanted to make sure we
Thank
gave
you.
them that.
yeah, I feel comfortable coming back again with your help.
Yeah, no, please speak with Brian and his staff. And again, thank you for coming before here. It's very, it's pretty brave to come in like this. So I'm glad that you're able to go through
Okay.
and gain some information from
And Mr.
this.
Chair,
So,
if I could, just one more thing and then get
yes,
to your vote, just for the folks in the audience. This is a use that would have to go to planning board for site plan review.
Okay.
It needs to have this miscellaneous appeal first, not miscellaneous, special exception appeal, because it's a special exception use in the RF. So you first need to have that before you go and spend any money putting a plan together for the planning board. But you will have to go to the planning board if you're approved here at
Okay.
zoning board. And that will require perhaps a little more sophisticated plan, maybe not a ton more, but there may be some cost to preparing that application. So I can help you with the zoning board stuff. If you get past that hurdle, you probably want to consult with the planning staff at the town office as
Okay.
well. Just so everybody knows. And that site plan review deals with many of the issues that you've raised, including traffic, including stormwater treatment, runoff, that kind of thing. They won't dive deeply into a business plan, but yeah, Mr. Freilinger's suggestion that it really is, a lot of these are business plan functions. How are you going to operate your?
Oh, no, I mean, I agree. I'm up here just
And-
throwing
and so Site
frisbees at
plan
you.
and zoning board don't necessarily dive into your business plan, but these are all considerations that you probably ought to be thinking about.
Okay.
So, thank you.
so that being said, all those in favor of tabling this application for 1 month?
One final
Yes.
comment. I
Yes.
do want to thank the neighbors who came in and to offer your comments. Please don't think that we're putting shilling on the side or anything like that. If anything, we're hearing you and we're asking the applicant to kind of go back to you guys and work with you. So thank you for coming. We appreciate your coming forward and it's been a long night. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, man, we can't have a public comment right now. Yeah, so, yeah, yeah, public hearing is over for the moment, but all those in favor of tabling this application, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. We are tabled. Thank you. We still have, Tom, we still have some business to go for in here, so if you guys can have a conversation, would mind going in the hallway? Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So right now, we are going to go into zoning board comments. So real quick, Mr. Longstaff, I think you have a comment you wanted to mention, maybe a reminder about our meeting with the town attorney later this month?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder that on October 26th, that's the Wednesday, 2 weeks from today, we have Phil Saucier coming to this room to do an in-house training for you all. Please, some of you, thank you. You already provided me with some possible questions or agenda topics. Phil loves to have those in advance so that he can prepare something, for you. He'll probably do his usual, just standard going through some of what's the term I'm looking for?
Definition of consanguinity.
Well, no, we're not necessarily that. Freedom of Information Act is what I was searching for.
Gotcha.
Very late. So consanguinity, we're not going to touch.
We'll leave that to Phil.
But yeah, so if you, while it's fresh in your mind, perhaps tomorrow or the next day, get me your comments, your topics, questions, so that I can get those to Phil in plenty of time so that he can prepare some answers for you.
Yeah, I
And
think-
we'll try to have some food here for you.
Great, and I think both David and Peter mentioned some information about the shoreland zone, some definitions, maybe a couple examples, and we can really kind of nitpick apart. So that maybe even taking the application that we had tonight that dealt with the shoreland zone, and maybe we can use that, since now it's public record, we can dissect that and just kind of use it as an example for discussion.
Yeah.
Shelley?
I like my steak medium rare if you're doing food.
You were bringing the lobster, weren't you?
Any other comments from board members?
Actually,
Go ahead, Mr. Fralinger.
just to reiterate, the shoreline zoning, I think we brought it up last year, but we didn't have an object example. So if we can have Phil bring an example to the table and walk us through, that would be great. Because I'm certainly, I'm developing my expertise and could use the assistance.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are the questions for it. If you come up with something in between now and the 26th, send an email to myself and Brian, and we'll make sure that gets on the agenda for discussion.
I'll provide a detailed list.
Yep. Appreciate that, Mr. Bork. Thank you. Good. Anything else?
One last thing, I know we still got a little bit of time, but there will be some folks getting done on the board, as of he who shall remain nameless.
I term out.
So
'Cause I've been on
be
here too
thinking
long.
about nominations. We will need a new chair and maybe a co-chair or vice chair. So please be thinking of that so that when we have those nominations, I don't know if we do them in December or January.
We always forget to do them in December, so it ends up being in January, but they
Yeah.
need to be done in December.
We've missed that.
So what I would recommend doing is potentially doing nominations in our November meeting, and then we vote on them for the December meeting.
That might be a little soon, but
That might be a little soon, but think about it. So I have to, because I've been on the zoning board for so long, I have to take a mandatory leave from the zoning board
That's what I was gonna
for,
ask.
for 1
is-
year at least. But yes, that I have to go away to a faraway place. Any other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.